Can you imagine delivering your child alone without a doctor, a midwife, or any emergency backup? Some women are choosing this dangerous method of giving birth after following misinformation online. Welcome back to Big If True Season 2. I'm Molly Thomas. Across the Western world, there's a growing trend: pregnant women having free births. Now, this is not the same as a planned home birth with a midwife. This is delivering babies without any medical support. It's a controversial choice that comes with major risks.
Free births, or wild birthing, is the idea that women know their bodies best, and because of that, don't need medical help to deliver a baby. In extreme cases, mothers are also encouraged to rule out ultrasounds, blood tests, or even a backup birth plan. But doctors warn, if complications occur, emergency care may come too late for the mother, baby, or both. Still, free birthing is big business and is encouraged online by some prominent influencers.
I didn't want an epidural. I didn't want a medicalized birth.
Free birth is absolutely an option for every single woman on Earth.
Many belong to this US-based group, the Free Birth Society, or FBS.
I'm Emily Saldea, and this is where we break the spell of medicalized birth.
The organization was founded in 2017 by this former birth doula. Emily is a non-medical support worker.
The Complete Guide to Free Birth is our flagship best-selling course.
She's built a global empire by selling online courses, paid consultations, and a podcast with millions of streams. A year-long investigation by journalists at The Guardian newspaper estimated her organization has made over $13 million since 2018. At the same time, they say mothers who were affected by this organization's advice have had tragic outcomes, including infant deaths. And just a little over a year ago, an Ontario Coroner's Committee issued a warning after noting a sharp rise in stillbirths believed to be linked to free births.
Later, we will hear from a coroner and midwife who have been monitoring this disturbing trend and its deadly aftermath. But first, we speak with one of the UK journalists who led The Guardian's investigation, The Birth Keepers. She and her investigative partner interviewed more than 60 mothers influenced by the Free Birth Society. Lucy, great to have you on the program.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Lucy, so you and your colleague Sharon looked into the Free Birth Society. What was your big takeaway?
So this started as an investigation into misinformation online. We were both really concerned about the amount of misinformation we were seeing around pregnancy and birth, and we wanted to find out if that was having real-world consequences on mothers and babies. And quite quickly, we came across the Free Birth Society and started investigating. But nothing really could prepare us for the extent of the harm that we would find was linked to FBS. So we found, we identified 48 cases of late-term stillbirths, neonatal deaths, or serious harm to mothers and babies involving mothers or birth attendants who were linked to FBS. And that included 18 women who we spoke to quite extensively, did some further investigative work with. We met them in person, went through their medical notes, that kind of thing. And we found that in those cases that FBS played a significant role in their decision-making, leading to potentially avoidable tragedies.
Lucy, was that coming from false information being sold to these mothers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that when you come to FBS, most people find it on social media through their Instagram or their podcast. Initially, it's sort of it's very, very slickly marketed, a really beautiful Instagram account that's largely videos of women having these really amazing, powerful free births at home and doing it on their own, and that's the entry point, and that's extremely inspiring for women, particularly first-time mothers who are maybe fearful of childbirth and
Sure.
what that entails. But women were then sort of hooked in by these stories, and it became, once they were sort of more involved and doing more of the courses and listening to more of their materials, that some of this misinformation would come out.
What is a specific misinformation that women are getting?
I think that what stands out is the misinformation about emergencies that can occur in birth and fairly commonly occur in birth. So things like preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, shoulder dystocia, babies getting stuck, all of these kinds of things, they are extremely downplayed. Women, that they are a common phrase that is used by Emily and Yolanda in FBS is they are variations of normal, so that they can essentially be resolved at home, and that you do not need medical professionals to solve them. And for example, we spoke to women who very nearly hemorrhaged to death because they so strongly believed in this messaging. They really felt that this would resolve on its own and that it was nothing to worry about. But thankfully, they eventually were taken to hospital and they survived.
There are millions of women around the world who lack access to adequate maternal care. Many are forced to free birth, right? This is not that.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. But I think it does say something though about the fears, often very justified, that women have about going to the hospital. More and more women we're hearing have had negative experiences in hospitals, whether they've had C-sections they didn't want or procedures performed on them that they didn't want without consent in some examples. So yes, it's coming from that backdrop. But absolutely, this is something that a lot of women don't have a choice to do, but these women are choosing it, believing that it is the best thing for them and their babies. And I should say that we don't. Sharon and I, my reporting partner, we were very clear that there's no judgment for women deciding to free birth. We understand why women would come to that decision, and we believe that women should be able to be free to give birth however they choose, whether that's free birth, home birth, or elective C-section. But what we were finding here is that women weren't really making fully informed decisions because the information that they were getting was false. We spoke to dozens of women who were impacted by FBS, many of whom lost their babies, were seriously injured themselves, or now are living with children who have been severely harmed in their birth and living with learning disabilities. And they really stay with you. I mean, it's these are women have been so brave to talk to us and share these experiences, because it really is the hardest thing to talk about, losing a baby. Especially, there's a lot of with a lot of the women, there's a lot of shame and guilt still around these circumstances, because they now look back on the teachings as being false, and they feel bad about obviously falling for some of the things that they were taught. And now describe them as sort of like dogmatic and almost cult-like.
The two leaders of this movement, Emily Saldea and Yolanda Norris-Clarke, the latter is a Canadian. I wonder how much, the cult of personality really weighs into so many people being influenced by bad information.
And these two women, Emily Saldea and Yolanda Norris-Clarke, who's from Canada, they are very charismatic and come across as extremely experienced. They're both ex-doulas. They don't have any medical training, but the way they present themselves, the way they talk, is as if they have had a lot of experience. So they've actually said, they say in a lot of their podcasts how experienced they are. But we looked into that and realised that actually some of that might be quite conflated.
A lot of false messaging there. Lucy, why are some women so vulnerable to these types of messages?
It really is attracting a very diverse sort of selection of women. But I think the one sort of uniting factor that we found, I think, with every single woman that we spoke to, was that they had traumatic prior experiences in hospital. They had either had C-sections that they didn't want, they had procedures that maybe they felt they hadn't consented to, or just had bad experiences where doctors or midwives had treated them poorly. So that was really a driving factor, I think, for a lot of the people that were particularly that were finding FBS.
So we have a clip of a midwife that was actually watching the FBS group, looking at when mothers were asking for help, and this is what one of them had to say.
I remember saying, that's not okay. And people saying, that's a variation of normal. And that's not a variation of normal. She needs help. And I remember typing, please go to the hospital. And as quickly as I would type it, it would get taken down. And there were several of us doing that.
So Lucy, people were trying to help and they weren't being able to get through to these women. Like what is that like when you're interviewing people that put in harm's way?
So in this case, it was Lauren Holiday who was giving birth in the desert in America. And she, despite having various symptoms that suggested she was in an emergency situation, including meconium in her waters, decreased fetal movements, she decided not to go to hospital based on advice that she was being given in the FBS Facebook group. But she actually didn't know until we interviewed her that there were women in that group who were concerned, people in the sort of community, particularly midwives like Renee Lapointe, who you just heard, who were telling her, please go to hospital, please go to hospital. But as quickly as they were posting, their posts were being taken down. So she didn't know that people were telling her to do that. And he was listening to the people who were saying, no, you're fine, everything's going to be fine, trust the birth process.
So it's a very inward looking group. You only get to speak if you're speaking their language. This group is making millions. They're making millions of dollars, Lucy. How are they making money like that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that surprised us. This is by definition, free birth is free. And yet they have managed to monetize this to quite an extent. More than 13 million in revenues since 2017. So one of the main ways they've done that, so as well as their podcast and their social media accounts, they have a very successful program called The Complete Guide to Free Birth. And women can buy it for $200. And they've made millions from that alone. More recently, they've set up 2 different schools. The Radical Birth Keeper School is the most popular, which has claimed they say they've trained more than 850 women. And this is a school that has now, I think it's more than 30 countries have women from more than 30 countries have gone through this school. It's 3 months. It's via Zoom, and only half of the course actually teaches the women about birth, and the rest is about business and sort of personal development.
Wow.
So these 850 plus women are then being sent out into the world and, attending births, which we found were sort of having devastating consequences for babies.
Lucy, what is your message to expectant mothers going online looking for the best information for their babies?
I think, social media is an amazing thing, especially, with women's health being, under-resourced, often there not being much information about certain conditions. It's very easy to turn to social media and sometimes find these communities. But I think I would just caution anyone to just do your research outside of what you're finding online, because these accounts like this one are so compelling, and people might appear to have a lot of experience and be very trustworthy and have a lot of research behind them, but that might not always be the case.
Lucy, really important reporting, you and Sharon. I hope everybody checks out the 6-part podcast series featured by The Guardian. Thank you for your time today.
Very much, really appreciate it.
We reached out to the Free Birth Society for comment, but received no answer.
Still to come, medical professionals are sounding the alarm about the free birth movement. But first, let's set the record straight in this week's headlines with Luis Felipe Muzalam.
Did Justin Trudeau give a speech to an empty auditorium? This year, Canada made a big splash at the World Economic Forum, including a special address from Mark Carney that stole the show.
We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Canada has what the world wants.
But he wasn't the only PM to take the stage. This image appears to show former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau giving a speech of his own shockingly with very few people in the audience. Is it real? I don't think so. The pic shows signs of AI manipulation, like why are these flags in between the seats? Or what's up with these people with visibly distorted faces? Besides, footage from one of Trudeau's actual talks shows people did show up, including pop star Katy Perry, his day to the summit. Speaking of speeches, did Mark Carney just threaten to declare war on the United States? Definitely not, but some would have you believe that he did. Recent social posts have claimed that Carney vowed to go to war with the US if Trump tries to invade Greenland, which the president has been hinting at for more than a year. But what did Carney actually say? At a recent press conference, the PM mentioned NATO Article 5, a rule under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that says an attack on one is an attack on all, including Canada, the US, and Denmark, which owns Greenland. Carney told reporters that Canada is committed to its treaty obligations. But Article 5 doesn't automatically force anyone to declare war, so it's not clear what would happen next. The good news is, Trump recently said he wants to buy Greenland and wouldn't use force to take it. Let's hope he means it. And finally, we've all been freezing out there, but some stories are too cool to be true. Like these images claiming that a lost camper survived 4 days out in the cold with the help of friendly wolves. According to some posts, the animals used their body heat to protect him from hypothermia, in a case described as extremely rare. Yeah, maybe. If by rare you mean probably never. Snopes couldn't find any coverage of a story like this with credible outlets, and none of the existing posts point to any real sources. Plus, it wouldn't be the first time heroic wolves appeared in a viral fake news story. And that's your reality check. Now you're in the know.
Free birthing isn't the only health trend raising concerns. Coming soon on Big If True, we investigate so-called miracle cures for autism and the serious risks they pose.
My next guests understand the dire consequences of free births. Dr. Louise McNaughton-Filion is a regional supervising coroner in Ontario. She recently raised concerns about a spike in stillbirths where no medical expert was present. And Manavi Handa is an associate professor at Toronto Metropolitan University and a midwife herself. It's great to have you both on the program today. Manavi, let me start with you. As a midwife, what are you hearing about the free birth movement in Ontario?
I mean, it's definitely very disturbing. I'm definitely hearing from more and more midwives that they're getting the impression from clients that they're going to birth on their own. And it raises a lot of dilemmas. Like when someone's sitting in front of you and they're seeming like they might not call you to their labor, there is this moment of, well, what is it that you're doing here, really? But it definitely sounds and feels like a growing trend, and that's really disturbing.
Let me ask you then, Manavi, how dangerous is it to have a baby alone? And I mean, without prenatal care, without any medical professional, without the tests that come before, how dangerous is that?
I think what I would say is it's kind of like asking someone how dangerous it is not to wear a seatbelt. You can get into a car 50,000 times and have nothing happen, but if something happens, it can really be exacerbated by not having a seatbelt. And so I kind of think of midwives or a care provider as your seatbelt. They can kind of protect you from terrible things spiraling out of control. I mean, it depends on the person's history, it depends on who they are, but it is something that most of the time is probably okay. If you don't have any tests ahead of time, you can't know for sure it's going to be okay. But when it goes badly, you want intervention and you want it really quickly.
Yeah, I like the seatbelt example because most of us are wearing that, even though you're right, most of the time we are safe. Doctor, let me come to you. You're the chair of a committee that looks at infant deaths, and you recently saw a cluster of stillbirths. Why was that concerning or stuck out to you?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a bit surprising. It isn't something we were looking for. And when we started they started to come in, we noticed that there was a bit of a commonality about it. I guess the first thing is people do deliver without assistance, and have done it for years, you know, in the back of a taxi cab or with paramedics while you're en route or stuff like that. It's unusual, though, to have it planned ahead of time. Everything's fine until it's not. And you can't predict. You can have somebody who is young and healthy, first baby, no other medical issues whatsoever, and everything will be fine.
Uh-huh.
Or you can have somebody who is in exactly that area and something happens that a trained midwife or a trained labor and delivery person would recognize. You know, the heart rate's a little too fast. There's a funny color coming out instead of the usual clear liquid when a baby is about to be born. And they would know that that's a time to intervene and help mom and help the baby. Whereas somebody who is having their own baby or on the phone with somebody who is not a trained professional wouldn't notice the difference.
Yeah, that's the ability to see an emergency. Doctor, you saw 6 stillbirths in that cluster. Is it possible that number is higher?
Oh, absolutely. The issue here is what gets called into the coroner's office. We investigate around 4% of all stillbirths in the province. And we investigate all stillbirths that occur out in the community. But if there's a complication related to a free birth, for example, and both the mom and the baby survive, but there are complications or there are other issues that come out, we wouldn't know about it. If the stillbirth occurred in the hospital and a physician completed a stillbirth certificate and it was related to free birthing, we wouldn't know about that either. We only know what is called into us.
Manavi, some women feel like the system has failed them, right? And so that's why they're in this position. Do you think that medical professionals have to change the way they even approach women that are thinking about free births?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think it's really an important moment to have a conversation where some people hear free birth and they automatically get turned off, whether it's a midwife or an obstetrician, and they're like, this person doesn't want me. They take it kind of personally. It's a teaching moment, and it's a moment to build trust and to ask someone what it is that they're looking for.
Is there anything we can do to stop this, Manavi?
I mean, I have had free birth clients come to me, and through a series of dialogues and what I would call like compromises, okay, you don't want vaginal exams in labor. These are the reasons why, or the moments why it might be really important to do one. Would you be okay in those circumstances? I really think one of the big ways to reverse this is a lot more education about the circumstances that make home birth safe. And it's not being there by yourself or having somebody online. And I do think, actually, I mean, it's unfortunate, but we're seeing press around this. And I think it is important for people to get the message out there that providers are worried about this. And it's a trend that is, I mean, it's a very, I would say, a privileged kind of trend. Like many women in the world are dying trying to get to a provider. And so it's a very strange moment in time that we have people doing the opposite. But I think we have to listen to what it is that the big fears are about our medical system.
Doctor, anything you'd like to add?
Well, what I would say is that I think she's hit the nail on the head. We are seeing an increasing number, it appears. Everything's by proxy, right? So the registrar's office has told us that there are more deliveries unattended than there were before, and the numbers are rising. And we see cases of preventable death and preventable stillbirth, and it's just heartbreaking. So if we can have that conversation with people that are seeking out free birth and just make sure that they understand all the risks and they have the chance to have them addressed and hopefully have the support that they want and need, then I think we can move forward with this.
Continue to listen, keep that relationship open, and conversation both ways. Ladies, great to have you and your expertise on the program today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Childbirth can be empowering and extremely rewarding, but when decisions are based on misinformation, there can be risks and sometimes tragic outcomes. If you have someone in your life who is pregnant, you might want to share this episode with them. I'm Molly Thomas. See you next Sunday at 8 or anytime online.